אנחנו נמצאים בוועידת הנשיא, יחד עם הכלכלן ז'ק אטאלי, אדם בעל הרבה מאוד היסטוריה והישגים. הוא היה בין השאר במשך תקופה ארוכה היועץ של הנשיא הצרפתי מיטראן. הוא כתב למעלה מ50 ספרים, הוא כותב כמעט כל יום-יומיים בלוג באתר שלו. יש לו פעילויות בתחום של פילנתרופיה ופעילות ללא מטרות רווח, ואנחנו רוצים להחליף אותו כאן כמה מילים. אנחנו כמובן נעבור לאנגלית. Good morning, Mr. Aטאלי. So I'm going to jump just right in. And 48 hours ago, the world received the decisions of the election in Greece. So is that the end of the European crisis? Probably not. But why don't you try to explain to us what is the major problem of the European structure? What's the danger? And what do you think it's a change, this decision in Greece?
Well, Europe is in a hurdle race, and this is only one of 1,000 hurdles that are ahead of us. Hurdle race because Europe is a very strange animal trying to build an architecture bottom-up, and we have never seen a nation build bottom-up. It's always by a conqueror or something. For the first time, we try to build it bottom-up.
And it's doing so far.
Well, in 50 years, we have done a lot. A common market, single union, single currency, which is a tremendous evolution. But we know from textbooks as well as from more than textbooks that a currency cannot work without a state, a budget, tax system to compensate the difference between the different nations. And then we have a currency, but we don't have that new instruments. That could have worked as long as the debt of each of our nations were small or at least manageable. It was the case before the subprime crisis, but subprime crisis was so poorly managed both by the US and by Europe. I mean, not managed. The only way they managed it was to increase the debt, American debt and European debt and Japanese debt and so on. Israel is out of that. But the only way to manage the debt, the crisis was that. And then now we are in Europe as well as in the US and elsewhere in a lot of countries with too much debt. And then either we have to find a way to finance that debt by putting our force together and borrowing together like the US did in 1790, when they create the treasury bills. Mm-hmm. And then we have to create for that euro bonds, or we will not be able to make that federal jump, and then in a period of time that we can postpone by quantitative easing, by any kind of printing money by the central bank, the euro will disappear. That's the question. And things are going well. The question in the good direction, mm-hmm. But the market seems to be in a hurry. More than the diplomats and politicians. That's the question.
And so, as far as you're concerned, the danger is what? What could happen in the next few months in Europe?
The worst case
scenario. Give us the good and the bad scenarios.
Yes, the worst case scenario would be that the market, I don't have the word market, but I would say the lenders, mm-hmm. which is clearer for pedagogy. The lenders will say, we don't believe that you will find a solution, and then the interest rates go up. Spain cannot borrow anymore, which is already the case. Yes. They borrow at 6%. Then they say not only the case for Spain, it's also the case for Italy and for other countries. And then it's become unmanageable, and some countries says, well, we don't find a solution. Then the central bank will intervene, put a lot of money, say to the government, you have some time more, I give you money, but I cannot do more than that. Then the Germans, that's the worst case scenario. The Germans will say, well, it's the beginning of something that will trigger inflation. We quit, or we let you quit by unplugging you, by not letting the central bank to give you more money. We unplug Spain, Italy, Greece, etc.
And that's a catastrophe.
That's a catastrophe not only for Europe, because it will be minus 15% of GDP and a lot of unemployment disastrous, but it will be a catastrophe for the world, looking at what Europe is in its dimension. The worst case scenario is important to understand that it's only with that fear that the government will move. The German government will not move without the feeling that they have an interest in the success of the others. The Germans could think that they are so good but it's not the case. The German economy is not in good shape. German demography is a catastrophe. The German public debt is higher than equal to the public debt of France. And for France, it's also important to understand the catastrophic scenario in order to accept to put in common some kind of sovereignty by creating new instruments of control of a budget, which could be seen as loss of sovereignty, but also could be seen as sharing sovereignty in order to avoid to lose sovereignty with the markets.
So what you say, in fact, is that in order to save Europe, it has to become a little bit more like the United States.
Exactly that. It's exactly it. Actually, there was a very important dinner in New York, July 26, 1790, between Hamilton, Madison, and Jefferson.
Okay, that's a long time
a
ago.
long time ago, where they overnight decide to create a treasury bill and to have a capital city.
Yeah.
We are exactly at that moment in Europe. We must do that. Do we have Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison? That's a key question.
Yeah, and well, what's your answer? I mean,
My bet.
what odd do you give for a federal development versus, I don't know, outright
Disaster.
disaster?
Well, Europe committed suicide so many times in the last century. In 1914, in 1918, with the Versailles Treaty, in 1933, etc. That I do not discard the possibility of such a new suicide. But I am quite hopeful. I am quite optimistic. I mean, we know that mistakes, and we will find a solution. So I would say 60%. Optimistic.
Okay, how well do you know the Israeli economy? Have you
Well,
been,
I admire the Israeli economy, which is a success story. I very often say that there are three success stories in the world today, which is Canada, Poland, and Israel, and I don't see any connections between the three.
Yes, well, many people outside of Israel see Israel as some kind of economic miracle, startup nation, and all that. But the Israeli fear and feel that situation here is maybe not as rosy as it looks from outside, especially regarding education and how the country is going to look in 10 years, with Israelis being the last one in the maths test, etc. So what do you think is the one most important reform that Israel should do?
First, with my organization, Planet Finance, we work to develop microfinance around the world in 80 countries, including in Israel, where we have an office and we work. And therefore, we know that there is a huge problem of poverty in Israel, and linked to education, but poverty not only with the Arabs, but with the Jews, with the Orthodox Jews, and not only them. And we will do our best to participate to a large effort about it. And I think, of course, that the key for the future of the nation is demography and education. That's the key. And the Israeli problem is really a very challenging one. Education is the core of everything. I do believe that education, demography, and rule of law are the three most important elements.
Okay, maybe one last question. In many countries, we see lots of protests. So there were protests in Europe. There are all the time protests in Greece and in Spain. In Israel last year, you may remember, 500,000 people went out on a specific night. How does one convince the young people who go outside and do not really understand the problem, and they mostly want to express their anger, what political solution they should push for?
You know, if I were 20, I think I would be with them.
That's natural. But
no.
They are confused. They have no specific agenda.
No, I wouldn't say that. If you were them, you would say this senior generation has ruined us by their debt, by the mismanagement of the environment, and by the fact that they will let us a lot of things to pay that they have not been bold enough to pay. Then, if I were them, I would certainly ask our generation, my generation and yours, to pay more. I don't know if it's the case in Israel, but in a lot of countries, the level of average pensions is higher than the level of average salaries, which is crazy. Why is it the case? It's the case because the majority of electors are old. and that the growth of the life expectancy give a majority to the older, which is really a problem. Then if I were young, I think that one of the most important battles today is to give more power, more economic power, a larger share of the pie to the young by moving the equilibrium between them. It's a matter of putting more money in education than in things that interest more the seniors, more money in terms of environment, and so on. I believe it's a very fundamental battle.
And you think that we will see more protests and possibly larger, maybe more violent protests as we go along, do you think that?
No, I mean, protests are not. Protest is part of democracy.
Yes.
And what you have seen in Greece demonstrate that protests, they have voted at the end quite rationally.
Yeah.
And all parties, even the new Mr. Spira's party, is not far from being rational. When he explained that the austerity plan is very unfair and taking more to the poor than to the rich, it's quite understandable. Therefore, I'm quite optimistic. I think that something must happen and will happen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.